This is ThinkTech Hawaii. Community matters here.
Hello and welcome to ThinkTech Hawaii and It Never Got Quiet. This is a half-hour program that explores the Hawaiian connection with the Vietnam War. I'm your host, Vic Kraft. Our guest last week wrote a book titled Almost a Hero. The title was meant to describe all those who serve regardless of whether they saw combat or not. They put on a uniform to serve. All were prepared to go in harm's way, which in the eyes of the author made them all heroes. Today that includes women. During the time of the Vietnam War, women were barred from serving in combat zones. The exception was in the medical professions. One of those stories was portrayed in the television series China Beach. Women have faced a unique problem in that entry into the armed forces on the same level as their male counterparts generated issues with well-entrenched concepts and attitudes. The tailhook scandal of 1991 revealed a culture that created a hostile environment for women. The aftermath of the scandal saw the Department of Defense initiate what they termed sweeping changes throughout all branches of the armed forces. However, legislation and even the Uniform Code of Military Justice, the legal rule book of the military, does not alter behavior or attitudes. For generations, war was considered the work of men. Women were the camp followers or ones who stayed at home to mind the farm. They had no place on the battlefield. Some might argue it is a case for genetic coding. Women bear the next generation and therefore should be protected. They hold the future of the nation within them. For whatever reasons, women have faced an uphill battle to earn their place in service of their country. They have not only been met with resentment and faced harassment, but at times with open hostility. It's difficult enough to maintain one's composure while under fire, but it becomes even more difficult when your own side is generating even more problems to contend with. Today we are departing from our normal format of interviewing a Vietnam veteran. Instead, we are bringing in a member of our target market, a veteran of the Afghanistan conflict era. Those of us who served in Vietnam have only recently begun to understand the impact of the war it had on our lives. It has been the desire of many veterans of that war to educate those from Operations Desert Shield and Desert Storm, and those from our Operations Iraqi Freedom and Enduring Freedom. They have been exposed to an unusual and abnormal event, war. Regardless of what tasks they performed during those conflicts, the experiences they had made a difference in their lives. The older generation, in the form of Vietnam veterans, are reaching out to the younger generation in hopes that they will learn from our experiences and lessons learned. The military may be one of the few professions that is honest. We wear our resume above our left breast pocket for everyone to see. One time a civilian remarked about my decorations, calling them merit badges. He little understood the meaning of those multicolored ribbons. They represented where I had been and what I had accomplished. Certainly they are meaningless to civilians, but they are a recognition from our peers and a grateful nation. It is hard for civilians to understand how difficult it was for Vietnam veterans to throw their decorations over the White House fence in protest of that war. Our guest today has deployed to Afghanistan and Uzbekistan. Her name is Jermaine Staley. She enlisted in the United States Air Force and trained as an information technology and computer technician. Jermaine's resume to this point are seen on the ribbons on the screen. She is a graduate of Waipahu High School, and since her recent discharge from the Air Force, has been working on her bachelor's degree in business. Aloha and welcome, Jermaine.
Aloha, Vic. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. It's a pretty impressive set of decorations. Can you tell us a little bit about what you did in the service?
Well, I was, in the beginning of my service, I was an information manager, and I supported the command support staff. In doing so, I supported the commander, the chief, the DO, and the entire unit administratively. I also did technology. Under technology, I fixed a lot of computers, PDAs, you name it, anything electronic, I was fixing it, even through my deployments.
Ah, okay. What motivated you to join the Air Force?
Well, to explore and to make an impact. I also had influences like my grandfather, my grandmother. My grandfather and my dad are both commanders. So yeah, there's a lot of influence in my life.
Why the Air Force as opposed to any of the other services?
Oh, well, I had a chat with my father and my dad, my father and my grandfather, and they particularly chose this branch for me. It made sense, doesn't it?
Now, the Air Force does have a reputation for being a little more lax in terms of discipline, and also has more creature comforts than the other services, so I can understand.
Yeah, I guess that's why they chose that.
Yeah. So you went through basic training and then went through your tech school, I assume.
Yeah.
Where did you do tech school?
It was at Keesler Air Force Base.
Keesler Air Force Base in Alabama?
No, Mississippi.
Mississippi. I'll get it straight one of these days.
It's okay.
Okay. And then from there, you went to your first assignment,
Yes,
which is where?
Which was RAF Mildenhall in England.
Ah, okay. Were you there for the shutdown, or?
No, I had left before then.
Oh, okay. And then came back to the States, or?
I did.
Yeah, whereabouts did you go?
Maryland.
Oh, okay. Oh, to any?
Fort Meade.
Fort Meade. Oh, the home of intelligence. Okay, cool. All right. Oh. And from there, I noticed that you went to Uzbekistan. That must have been an interesting assignment, because that's not one of the places that are normally people put on their dream card as far as where they want to go.
K2, Camp Stronghold Freedom. So yes.
Can you tell us anything about what happened there or what you did?
Well, I set up comms, and so I was with the Army, and that's what we did. We supported all comms. You know, anything that was wrong, we fixed it. Anything comm related.
Ah, okay. Well, let's get into the meat of the issue as far as working on the job. How were you treated by your male counterparts?
It was very challenging. As a young, naive airman, straight out of college, you know, it was very challenging in a male-dominated organization.
Challenging in what ways? Just
I wanted to be seen equally, and I didn't feel that way. It was such a challenge. It was one of the toughest experiences, very demanding on top of that.
Do you feel that more tasks or more responsibilities were laid on you than your male counterparts, or was it the other way around? Or?
No, it was not necessarily that. It was meeting expectations. You know, so.
In what way? As I said, they expected more from you, or?
Not necessarily, not more. Treating me with respect was challenging. That was the tough part.
Yeah, I guess that would be tough as far as the respect, having been in the service myself at a time when women were just becoming a part of the various job specialties that were previously barred to women. I saw a number of different ways in which things were handled, as far as how women were treated.
Yes. Yes.
It depended also upon the individual, but how would that be any different from a male as it was from a female? Because I saw men who were treated disrespectfully as well.
I think as a young airman, very young airman, we were seen differently.
Ah.
Yes. So maybe, perhaps, there were other ways they were looking at me.
Ah, so you would say that it was the gender more than the uniform?
Yes.
Ah,
yes.
okay. That does present itself as a problem. I know that, excuse me, when we talked about this before, you had an experience that more or less prepared you in a way for going to your next assignment in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And how did you prepare yourself for that experience, or for Afghanistan?
Well, I was mistreated my first deployment. So to prepare for my second deployment, I actually, and some people perceive this as pretty extreme, I shaved my head off, my hair off, sorry. I shaved my hair off. I wanted to be looked at as an equal. I wanted the mission done. So how else could my leaders look at me, you know, if I was a distraction?
So the perception then, you're trying to eliminate some of that perception and just through appearance alone. Did it help?
I think it did.
It did?
Yeah.
You got through it okay?
I did. I sure did. We had a great team, you know, and I had my flight chief who was stationed at a different FOB looking in at, you know, calling in and making sure I was okay. It was just 4 on my team, and I was the only female. Yeah,
FOB being a foreign forward operating base.
Yeah.
Now, you were relating something to me about that as far as going out into the field. Now, again, you were exposed to hostile fire in a number of different ways, and whether or not it's just the idea that somebody could shoot at you, you actually had the mortars and the rockets come in and at you guys, as well as going out, as you said, to the FOB one time, and you were armed only with a .45 and an M16 or an M4 by yourself. That had to have been a harrowing experience.
Well, there is power in the forces around me. So, you know, and I felt that. And so there was safety there.
Okay, all right. That's still, it's bad enough being in that kind of a combat experience where you're worried about the bad guys, but here you are, you had done something dramatic to not be different in order to take away that distraction.
Yes. It was necessary. I felt it was necessary. I didn't want what happened in my first deployment to happen again in my second.
Yeah. How many other women were in your unit?
In my second deployment?
Yeah.
Well, it was just me on the team.
Oh, okay.
So obviously there were other forces, other females on the FOB. So yes.
But in different specialties, doing different things.
Yes.
Did you get a chance to socialize with them at all, or?
It was rare, you know, mostly contractors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you had to, of course, deal with your team, which was all male then.
Yes.
Besides yourself.
Yes. But I'm used to that.
Yeah, but it's a matter of the attention. Were the guys protective at some point?
Yes, actually, they all handed me their knives. I actually had my weapons on me as well, but they also handed me the keys to a truck and the knives. Yeah, they were very protective of me.
Oh, that's interesting. Team. That's very interesting. Yeah. Well, we're going to take a break here, and we'll get back to something, and we'll talk about women in combat in just a minute. We'll be right back. We'll have a break here for a couple of messages.
This is ThinkTech Hawaii, raising public awareness.
Aloha. My name is Mark Shklav. I am the host of ThinkTech Hawaii's Law Across the Sea. Law Across the Sea comes on every other Monday at 11 a.m. Please join us. I like to bring in guests that talk about all types of things that come across the sea to Hawaii. Not just law, love, people, ideas, history. Please join us for Law Across the Sea. Aloha.
Hello, I'm Helen Dora Hayden, the host of Voice of the Veteran, seen here live every Thursday afternoon at 1 p.m. on ThinkTech Hawaii. As a fellow veteran and veterans advocate with over 23 years experience serving veterans, active duty, and family members, I hope to educate everyone on benefits and accessibility services by inviting professionals in the field to appear on the show. In addition, I hope to plan on inviting guest veterans to talk about their concerns and possibly offer solutions. As we navigate and work together through issues, we can all benefit. Please join me every Thursday at 1 p.m. for the Voice of the Veteran. Aloha!
Welcome back to It Never Got Quiet. We're talking today with Jermaine Staley, veteran of Afghanistan, Air Force, information technology specialist, And we were just going to get into the business of her deployment to Afghanistan. The question that I have for you, Jermaine, is you spent 15 years in the service, in the Air Force. You had only 5 years to go to get your retirement. There had to have been some mitigating reasons as to why you got out after 15. Could you explain a couple of them?
Well, I get this asked to me all the time. But my answer is simple. I had sacrificed enough, I believe. So there was nothing left for me to give. I think I've given my all. You know, I felt like it was my turn for me to invest in myself.
Well, when you say you sacrificed, it had to have been personal sacrifice.
Yes, very personal.
Yeah,
yes.
and we don't want to get into that, but no, in things that we've talked about before is I know that you had some misgivings about going back or being redeployed to Afghanistan or going back, in that perhaps maybe what you had to contribute really wasn't helping the cause, if you will. Is that the case, or I mean? Here you had a mission and you felt like you weren't making a dent in what it was that we were supposed to be doing from an overall viewpoint.
Well, I returned from that last deployment from Afghanistan. I was disheveled. The impact I had made there was a direct. And like most service members, I think when we come home, it's a tough transition, and we don't feel like we're making an impact. I didn't feel like I didn't have any more to give. I made my sacrifice, and I don't believe things are being resolved. Was I making an impact? Maybe small, maybe my whole team, of course, you know, but overall picture, I don't think I made an impact at all.
That's a terrible thing, especially since you were committed. You had already expended 15 years of your life to a career, and to be able to just give it up because you felt as though you're burnt out. Really.
Certainly, yeah.
And,
I think a lot of us are.
Yeah.
You know, we put our all into it, our blood, sweat, and tears. And I was burnt out. I really was.
Yeah, it's and again, the idea of we've been going back to Afghanistan since the early 2000s, and this mission doesn't seem to have ended. You know, we're continuing it on, and I feel that okay, so you add another battle star to your ribbons, your Afghanistan campaign ribbon. Now, what does that mean in terms of what you've accomplished? And I know that a lot of us feel that being in the service, we are part of a larger group, and we do have something to contribute. And no, as far as your personal sacrifice, I'm sorry things that happened turned out the way they did.
Well,
Yeah.
well, it empowered me. I feel like I'm certainly a stronger person of it.
No. Well, how do you feel about women in combat zone?
So, well, I believe women can do anything. It's been proven. You know, the reason why I actually joined their force, another reason why I joined their forces was to prove to myself that I could do it. You know, I did do it. So, but when it comes down to war, hand-to-hand combat, I believe women does not compare to the average male. The average male is much stronger than the female. So therefore, no, I don't believe that we should be out there hand-to-hand combat within the male, dominated community or organization.
Well, how about even in just your organization? I mean, you had said that you felt like you were a distraction. How did that work? I mean, your last deployment, guys protected you.
Yes.
But is that a distraction for them as far as being able to do their job?
That's a possibility, and that I can't answer.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
Did I make it easier for them? Possibly.
Yeah, it's so we're working on the gender difference there, and it again, you can feel protective, or you can feel that men are now in a combat zone and away from their families, and possibly you are looked upon a little bit different light as a potential advocate in a way. But it's something that perhaps maybe we can't work out in terms of behavior. I mean,
Right.
do you think that it's workable? Or, I mean, how would we go about changing that?
Oh,
How would we change attitudes? Or how could we change attitudes?
gosh, that's a pretty deep question, Vic. How can we change that? Maybe separate the females from the males. You know, I can't really answer that question.
Yeah.
There are females out there, you know, right now, you know, that are fighting for us, fighting that war. So how do I answer that question? I wouldn't want to take them out because they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, you know. So I'm not sure how to answer that, Vic.
Yeah. I think it's probably a subject for a discussion. It's for folks a lot smarter than both of us.
Yeah, I agree.
But it is something that I see what you're saying as far as a distraction. I'm sure it does represent something that does impact the ability to do the job.
Yes.
And I don't know if separation of the sexes would do any better, because you're going to still be working or having contact some way or another.
Yes.
And
we contrube.
Yeah,
You know,
and you do
gender
contribute.
diversity is very important.
Yeah, yeah. No, I had asked, one of the movies that comes to my mind is done by Paul Gross, who chronicled a Canadian unit in Afghanistan, and having male and female working within the same unit. And there were relationships there, and of course they were
course.
frowned upon, but
Yeah, it is a
they did occur.
distraction.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, how are you using your experiences, or have you gained anything from your experience in the service as far as applying it to what you're doing now?
I've certainly gained a lot. I have a titanium backbone now, working with very strong leaders. So what I hope to do future with business-wise, because that's where my degree is towards, is learn from the bad, learn from the negative leadership, and stick with the good, you know.
Any advice for your young counterparts coming from Afghanistan and Iraq?
You know, those lessons are learned. They're learning tools, and I learned every lesson to be learned, I believe. And I think at this point in the future, my future is much brighter because of those experiences.
Oh, what would you tell the youngsters, though, coming out?
Coming back from
Coming back?
Afghanistan,
Sure.
Take your time with integrating back into the community. It does take time. I've only been out a couple years, but still, I'm still connected. There's still emotions that come from it.
That's something that an awful lot of retirees don't understand, and that is that it does take time to transition. Yeah, they've spent their entire adult life in this business, and it's very, very segregated, very confined by comparison to dealing with the rest of the civilian community. Yeah. Jermaine, I want to thank you very much for being here today and telling us your story.
Thank you, Vic.
I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. I'm going to have to read this from the paper that I've written here. In the previous issue of this program, I asked what legacy Vietnam represents. I have also asked some of our elected representatives of what our interests are in other parts of the world. To date, I have yet to receive any answers from either them or our audience. There are many lessons of the Vietnam War, yet it appears we have failed to learn from them. Our leadership engaged us in conflicts in Afghanistan and Iraq. We overthrew Saddam Hussein in the pretext of ownership of weapons of mass destruction. Curiously, none were ever found. We have been chasing the Taliban in Afghanistan for years. It has been said that our involvement in Iraq helped to create another problem in the form of ISIS. 2 presidents have vowed to extract us from conflicts in that region, yet we are still there. What did we learn from Vietnam, and have we applied it to our current global view? History doesn't repeat itself, people do. The past blundered. They have told us so in so many books. Are we committed to continuing similar strategies? Our guest today asked the question of herself, what am I doing? Or what good am I doing? She ended a career she felt was going nowhere, not in the form of personal gain, but from what good she was doing. She joined so that she could contribute, but the question became, for what? She struggled with her convictions of wanting to make a difference, all the while being made extra wary of her gender. Again, it's bad enough doing your job under fire, but when the enemy is on your side, how does that impact your ability to perform your job? The Country Joe and the Fish song and its 1, 2, 3, what are we fighting for, may be ever so appropriate today as it was 50 years ago at Woodstock. The Ken Burns Lynn Novick Vietnam documentary is a chilling story. It seems all that has changed from Vietnam to the Middle East are the players and location of this Greek tragedy. I can only ask what our interests are. What are our goals? Are we being deceived again as we were in Vietnam? For me, the Burns Novick documentary is a chronicle of institutional failure and asks what and who we are as a country. In the case of our guest, it would appear much of the policy changes to address women in the armed forces post-Tailhook scandal may look good from a PR perspective, but in actuality has failed. Next week, we will convene a panel to discuss the lessons learned from Vietnam and what we can do about them. We would love to have some feedback. If you have some comments, please send an email to 808vietnamvets@gmail.com. I would like to thank the staff here at ThinkTech Hawaii for all their support and assistance. Truly, without them, this program would not be possible. Please come back again next week for another issue of It Never Got Quiet. Mahalo.